talk really loud. I don't know, this doesn't seem to be that great of a mic, but anyway. Thank you so much for coming again. As you know, we combined 2 support groups together. So we have the Yale Movement Clinic, headed up by, where'd she go? By Megan. And she was head of her support group, which was down at the Elephant in the Room. And they somewhat left there and asked if they could come here. So we're happy to have you if you're with part of Megan's group.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. We have Monica, who's going to do her presentation for you tonight. She's a registered dietitian, and she owns the business Dietitians Driven. She's going to tell you all about gut health and what's good for you, okay? And what's good for me. If you haven't gotten this card, this is a card that has all our upcoming support group meetings. So I'll have them on the back table, so please just grab one before you leave, okay? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Terry. I'm the assistant fitness director downstairs, and I became the facilitator here by accident, really. I have a lot of people who have Parkinson's who come in to work out with me and requested that we hold a support group here. So that is why we started, and so far it's been very, very successful. So tell anybody you know, it's open to anybody. You don't have to be a member to come here. I mean, we'd love to have you as a member, but you don't have to be a member here. The other thing is too, if you have silver sneakers, maybe with your insurance, you already have a free membership here. So either silver sneakers or active renew, just stop at the front desk, they can put you in and you're a member. Okay, I'm gonna hand it over to Monica, and I'll talk to you after if there's any other questions.
Hi guys, thank you so much. I will make sure to speak loud. So again, my name is Monica Marcello. I'm the founder and lead dietitian at Dietitian Driven. So a little bit about me. I got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree from the University of Connecticut, go Huskies. I am certified in low FODMAP dietary counseling. Show of hands if you guys have heard of the low FODMAP diet. Okay, not a lot. Lucky for you if you have not. We will touch on that a little bit today, but my goal for you all is to make sure you're really leaving with practical applications that whether you're a caregiver or a patient, you can start implementing into your life. So I have spent 5 years of doing nutritional counseling, and I had the privilege and honor of working at RVNA Health. Has anybody heard of RVNA Health before? Megan. Okay. So they are a comprehensive healthcare company, and they're starting to develop a Parkinson's center. And that was really my first introduction to Parkinson's nutritional counseling, and really realizing that there was a goal beyond just, oh, we need a balanced diet for our Parkinson's patients. Fast forward, I started my own company this year called Dietitian Driven, and I am a 100% insurance-based dietitian. So that basically means I really wanted to make nutritional, individualized counseling affordable and integrated into our healthcare system, the same way you would go to your doctor and they would say, oh, you're constipated, take Miralax, to have it roll, yeah, I see you in the back. To roll off your tongue, oh, you have these issues, see a dietitian or work with a dietitian. So that was really my goal, and I'm happy to answer questions about that after, but let's really dive in. So in order to, understand how we can feel better, we have to understand what's going on. I was even telling Megan earlier, the identification piece and understanding the functions of our gut is crucial, because you cannot manage what you don't understand. So there's multiple functions of the gut. The first one is functional digestion. So when we think about digesting our food, we often think about, or when we think about the gut functions rather, we think about digesting our food, right? Like we think about enzymes and swallowing and absorption. So that's what most of us think about when we think about gut health and gut health as it relates to Parkinson's. However, you can see there's 4 other main gut functions, and that one includes our immune response. So about 70 to 80% of our immune cells actually reside in our gut. And so understanding that constipation is one of the very first symptoms of Parkinson's. It can happen about a decade later before you have a diagnosis, before there's any onset of tremors, right? So we already know that there is some alterations in gut functioning. And what can happen as a result is the immune system that is, resides in our gut can also be altered. And for those of us, actually, you guys mind, show of hands who has GI symptoms. So I would say like about a third of the room. Okay. So for about a third of us, right, that can actually lead to something called intestinal permeability, right? And this just means that what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. So if you're having symptoms in your gut, it's very likely that other things, you have this sort of systemic effect, right? So other things can be happening as a result of what's going on in the gut, specifically as it relates to the immune system. Does that look a little dark to you guys? Yeah, did I click something? Did that just change?
I think it's like goes into maybe a slight sleep mode.
Yeah, if you touched it.
My screen is awake. Yeah, it's not my screen. My screen is bright. It's fine. We'll keep going. Okay. So the third function of the gut is called the gut microbiome. Show of hands, who's heard of the gut microbiome? Many people. All right, let's talk about it. Who feels like they know what the gut microbiome is or does? Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Okay. So the gut microbiome, there's about 10 trillion, 2 to 3 pounds of bacteria, protozoa, fungi that predominantly reside in your large intestine. And for the most part, these do a lot of really good things for us. They play a role in our bowel health, right? Constipation, diarrhea. They play a role in how quickly our food moves through us, right? So a lot of times, again, in Parkinson's, we've got reduced motility, okay? Reduced gut functions. And so the gut microbiome actually plays a role in this as well. Additionally, the gut microbiome also shifts in Parkinson's disease, right? So there's, again, this bacteria, protozoa, all these different microorganisms that reside in the gut microbiome, and we actually see a difference in the overall types and quantity of bacteria and microorganisms in folks with Parkinson's disease and those without Parkinson's disease. And really, it kind of stands to reason. A lot of this research, and especially with the understanding that constipation occurs a decade before symptom onset, it really kind of, proposed the question of what is the gut connection as it relates to Parkinson's onset. So, right, there's how it relates to Parkinson's onset, but also Parkinson's symptoms. And they, found recently that alpha-synuclein, a hallmark of Parkinson's disease, is actually originated in the gut. So it's obviously very important for management, but hugely important for prevention as well. Then we have the enteric nervous system, and that's sort of what I like to call like the local government of the gut. So this is where all the neurotransmitters exist, kind of orchestrating the functional digestion, immune response, and gut microbiome is all kind of orchestrated by the enteric nervous system. And lastly, the gut-brain axis. I like to think about the gut-brain axis as like our federal government, talking to the state government or the local government, the enteric nervous system, about what to do and how to function. And I really like to highlight these 5 main functions because what you'll find is many people, in fact, I had one kind gentleman back there say, I've got everything on your list. I've got every disease and condition on your And that is because there's this upstream, downstream effect, right? If you've got functional digestion, or that's what has originally been disrupted, it's gonna affect your immune system, your microbiome, your enteric nervous system, your gut-brain axis. And that's what we see in Parkinson's disease, right? We see reduced motility a lot of times. Now, everyone doesn't present this way, but a lot of times it's reduced motility, constipation, bloating after meals, distension, maybe like a gurgly stomach, burping, reflux. And then we see more, right, that's local to the gut. Then we also see these systemic effects as well. Fatigue, joint pain, poor sleep, lack of energy. So all of this is because even if something has originated with just one function being disrupted, it trickles down or trickles up. So you very likely have all different functions being affected in Parkinson's disease. So now that we sort of understand the functions of the gut, let's talk about gut health. Has anybody heard that term? You guys show of hands. I see some people nodding their head, right? And I always like to ask, okay, what does gut health mean? So it's first important to understand that some of the recommendations for gut health are necessary and appropriate if you don't have gut symptoms, okay? So there's sort of like two ways of approaching it. What is gut health for just having a healthy gut and being preventative, but then there's also the other aspect that you want to think about if you have gut symptoms that actually might look different than someone who's just looking to optimize their gut health. And as I give my recommendations, I'll make sure to try to distinguish between each one. Does that make sense? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so this is the hierarchy of gut health. And again, you'll see that it sort of reflects the gut functions. We'll see that in order to have optimal gut health, we want to have optimal functional digestion. We want to make sure that we have enough stomach acid, that we're able to chew our food appropriately. And remember, guys, digestion actually starts in our mouth. Physical digestion starts in our mouth, but we start secreting about 20% of our digestive enzymes just when we think about food. So that's truly amazing. So when your partner is cooking, or when you're cooking, or when you're in a restaurant and you can see the food walk by, 20% of your digestion is being stimulated right then and there. Physical digestion starts in the mouth, right? So are we able to chew? How's our oral health, right? Do we have chronically bad breath, right? These are all different things that we can think about. Then when we're in our stomach, are we producing enough, again, stomach acid? Because stomach acid is actually incredibly antimicrobial. And that's another problem that we see in the Parkinson's disease patients, is that this constipation and reduced motility creates this sort of overgrowth or dysbiosis of microorganisms. And so stomach acid is one of the main things that actually maintains a healthy sort of gut microbiome, believe it or not. Because when we're eating, we're exposed to pathogens or food debris or things that are not always the best for us. And it's our stomach acid is that first line of defense that kills off those bugs. So that's an important thing that we want to think about as well. We also want to.
Just enlarge that.
Can I? Can I?
That's Megan's computer. I don't know. Can you do it from this computer?
Say again.
Oh, I see what you. Thank you.
Oh, very good. I know.
Thanks, Mike.
I know. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's better. Yeah, you got it. Okay. So functional digestion is really optimizing that piece that we kind of mentioned earlier, which is like what we all think about when we think about what our gut actually does for us. The second piece, again, following the gut functions, is optimizing a healthy immune response. And we sort of look at that by ensuring adequate production of immunoglobulin A, which is sort of this beneficial immune protectant that works on our mucosa. And then last but not least, of course, we want to optimize our gut microbiome, right? So you'll find the hierarchy of gut health follows sort of reversely the functions of the gut, right? We want to touch on all different pieces. And when we think about the gut microbiome, what makes a healthy gut microbiome, right? That's really the question. So it's three main things. One, it is diversity. So we find that people who have a more diverse gut microbiome have healthier guts and also healthier outcomes in general when we think about quality of life, longevity. So not, again, doesn't just stay in the gut. Additionally, we also think about absence of pathogens, right? That's sort of what I talked about earlier, how we are chronically being exposed, PD patients, folks with PD and folks without. We are always being exposed to bacteria, pathogens, and when we do have PD, we're at even an increased risk because we've got reduced motility, increased constipation. Inherently, our gut microbiome taxa shifts, right? The microflora shifts. So these become especially important when we think about Parkinson's. So again, it's diversity, absence of pathogens, and it is absence of dysbiosis. And what dysbiosis really means is that we want to have like an ecosystem. If you think about it, equate it to like the Amazon rainforest, for example. If you have an overgrowth of trees, I don't know a lot about the ecology of the Amazon rainforest, but we can imagine if you have an overgrowth of trees or a certain species, even if it's a good species, that can sort of shift the whole ecosystem. So it's very similar when we think about our gut health. So we want this sort of layer of evenness. And we find, again, research has shown that people with Parkinson's disease have already an abundance of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. And ironically, the main over-the-counter probiotics, Culturelle, there's one other one, Culturelle and Florastor, those are lacto and bifido blends. So, right, we think, I'm doing a good thing for my gut health. I've got Parkinson's disease, I've heard that there's this connection, let me take a probiotic. But in fact, you already have typically, right, an abundance of these species. So you're just exacerbating the problem because, in short, gut health is just so complex. And you're exacerbating that dysbiosis when you kind of feed into an overgrowth of one or more species. And we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. Oh, hi, woke up. Great. So what does this mean and how does this relate to you? So again, just kind of highlighting that all of these interventions, they touch on all various aspects of the gut. So I sort of created this pyramid so you could understand that we want to start, making small changes, and starting there is a great first place to start. So we've got an anti-inflammatory and Mediterranean diet, and we're going to go into depth on each one of these. But high level, you can't out-supplement a poor diet. You can't, out-exercise a poor diet, right? So the very first and most important thing that we want to focus on is anti-inflammatory and Mediterranean diet. We'll talk a little bit about why. Number two is the fiber, so increasing our fiber intake. We then want to think about polyphenols, which are antioxidants, right? Has anybody heard of antioxidants? They basically, we traditionally know them to go into our blood and help scavenge free radicals and work on our heart, but they actually do that very thing in our gut as well. So they're an incredibly powerful tool for optimizing gut health. Fermented foods and probiotics and prebiotics again. We'll talk about adequate meal spacing and mindfulness. And then above all, right, eating for your unique needs. So this kind of goes back to that idea that I was talking about earlier, how, some of this can be applied for you in the context of optimizing your gut health. And there also is going to be some recommendations that maybe don't fit if you have gut symptoms. The best way that I can explain that is, you know, if you, and the reason, by the way, that is because we do want to remove triggers. So that's a very real thing in our Parkinson's disease patients, is removing triggers from the diet while optimizing, you know, gut healthy anti-inflammatory foods. And here's my analogy for that. You know, we would all agree that running is good for us, right? Okay. So, but if you break your ankle running, it's not good for you, right? And when you break your ankle running, you do two things. You, one, remove the stimulus, you stop running. And two, you go to physical therapy. And that's the best analogy that I can use for folks who are exhibiting gut symptoms, is that we want to remove the triggers, and two, do all the gut healing foods, right? Whereas folks with just looking to optimize and having minimal symptoms, they can kind of skip that. They can run and they can do the physical therapy to get better, right? That's kind of my analogy. Does that make sense? Awesome. Okay. So let's dive in. Why the Mediterranean diet? I don't know. So first of all, longitudinal studies have suggested that the Mediterranean diet reduces the risk of Parkinson's disease progression, reduces the risk of symptom onset, reduces the risk of Parkinson's disease in general, and also delays progression. Randomized controlled trials have also demonstrated that the Mediterranean diet improves cognitive function and locomotor performance in Parkinson's disease patients. So what I love about that is we don't even touch on gut health, right? When I just mentioned that. So there's already good evidence that the Mediterranean or an anti-inflammatory diet is going to improve progression, delay progression in PD patients. But we also know that the Mediterranean diet is extremely beneficial for the gut, which we know is first affected in PD. So I kind of wanted to just review this, this graphic here. This was taken directly from a research article that highlighted the relationship of Parkinson's disease and Mediterranean diet. And they showed that the main way, right, so going back to, okay, this improves cognitive function, locomotor performance, delays progression, is all by way of the gut as well. I'm gonna wake this thing up again. So what we can see here in the blue is that when we eat a diet, right, the Mediterranean diet that's high in omega-3 fatty acids, that's got these polyphenols, high in fruits and veggies, increase our fiber, it directly improves the beneficial bacteria that is in our gut microbiome that we know is altered in PD, and that they produce what's called short-chain fatty acids, which get into our blood and can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and influence that cognitive function, locomotor performance, and you can see here they do that by increased production of antioxidant enzymes, increasing dopamine, anti-inflammatory cytokines, ultimately contributing to an overall healthier brain. Now, in the red, you can see that a diet that we would consider like the standard American diet, which, you know, Western diet, we can see that it's typically lower in dietary fibers. It's typically higher in saturated fats. And therefore, it sort of alters our gut microbiome, which again is just one of our gut functions, and can increase the, or sort of lead to the aggregation of alpha-synuclein in the gut, which we know kind of forms this dysbiosis, right? We talked about that, so there's no diversity, it's all uneven, there's increased pathogens, and therefore can influence our brain, right? And influences Parkinson's disease. It does this by increased production of alpha-synuclein, increased radical species, as well as pro-inflammatory cytokines, right? So one thing I also want to highlight here is I think it's just human nature for us to say, no, you know, I don't eat like a Western diet. Like there's no way my diet is as bad as like what she's showing here, And I wanna let's go there for a minute. So the kind of diet that I'm even referring to, it isn't like your hamburgers, hot dogs, McDonald's all day. A diet that maybe you're doing cereal for breakfast, maybe lunch is a sandwich with deli meat and turkey and a high sugar and like a vanilla yogurt. Maybe a snack is a granola bar, and maybe dinner's pasta with like a canned tomato sauce, right? We would maybe say that that diet actually is pretty healthy. Yeah. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. That is the exact diet that is high in saturated fatty acids, low in, I mean, that is the red diet, right? It doesn't need to be this like overt unhealthy diet that you would see, well, I forget what that, like, it was like, the supersize me, is that what? Yeah, I forget what, like it doesn't need to be that for it to sort of fall into this red category here. So now that we've sort of set the stage, oh man, that's looking real small. Okay, I'll tell you, don't worry, you can take good notes, and I've got more slides on it, guys. What is the Mediterranean diet? So if it's not what I just said, if a healthy diet for Parkinson's is not what I just said, what is it? So this is, believe it or not, the Mediterranean diet food pyramid. And essentially it emphasizes this unprocessed, plant-rich whole foods. And so there's a large emphasis on fruits and vegetables of 5 to 10 servings per day. Extra virgin olive oil is the primary source of fat. So again, what I love about this diet and why it's so different than sort of like the diet culture and what we've heard historically is we've been told all our lives low carb is healthy, right? Low carb is the way to go. The Mediterranean diet is like, nope. In fact, we're gonna do higher carb and higher fat, and we're gonna get you healthier than you've ever been. So the piece about the carbs is that the Mediterranean diet really emphasizes whole grains. So having 3 servings of whole grains every day, that could be quinoa, farro, oats, that could be black rice, that could be barley, bulgur, wheat germ, right? These are a key component of the Mediterranean diet about 3 times a day. The fruits and veggies, you want about 5 to 10 servings a day. And when I say servings, I can see people being like, she's crazy, who does that? Really what I mean is just getting them in your diet, right? So for example, who makes smoothies? Okay. Can you add, maybe instead of getting the strawberries, can you get the berry mix? And now you've gotten 4 different fruits in your smoothies, right? So that's an easy way to kind of increase the servings of that. For people who make yogurts or maybe oatmeal, instead of just doing like strawberries on your oatmeal, can you add raspberries, blueberries, and strawberries? If you make eggs in the morning, can you throw a blend of spinach and kale in them, right? So it's just small changes and thinking a little bit differently that can lead to significant progress. So that's sort of like the very foundation of the Mediterranean diet. You'll see that I like pyramids. I think it helps helps organize our thoughts. So the second component is nuts and seeds. So again, this is that higher fat component coming from the extra virgin olive oil as well as nuts and seeds, aiming for about 1 to 2 servings every day. Additionally, this is a little, not controversial, but I think this is definitely against what you see in mainstream media, is that the Mediterranean diet encourages regular intake of dairy. So plain Greek yogurt, kefir, we'll talk about kefir a little later. Cheese, right? Aged cheese, Parmesan, mozzarella. So that's also very different as well. Then, what I also love is that they have a whole sort of foundational piece that is dedicated to increasing herbs and spices. So now is the time. Does anybody have an herb garden? Some people shaking their head, yeah. So herbs are actually incredibly potent sources of polyphenols, incredibly potent sources of antioxidants. So again, break out your caprese salad, but maybe do it over quinoa instead of bread. Do your mozzarella cheese, do your tomato, do your basil, again, over quinoa or farro with some extra virgin olive oil and maybe a little bit of pumpkin seeds, right? That's one easy way. We all know the caprese salad, the caprese sandwich, to make it fall in line with the Mediterranean diet. Then you'll see we've got the protein sources. And so what's highly encouraged on the Mediterranean diet is protein sources such as salmon and fatty fish. Excuse me, I'm just getting my water. So salmon and fatty fish is key because this is where you get those omega-3 fatty acids, right? So that was a key component in this slide right here. And that is coming from salmon, sardines, tuna, mackerel, herring. And so we want to try to have that about 3 times per week if possible. The other sources of protein are coming from lean sources like chicken breasts specifically, beans as well, and then eggs. By the way, this isn't a heart health presentation, but the egg yolks don't raise your cholesterol, so don't worry about that. You can have as many as you want. So eggs are also an important piece as well. And then at the very top, we've got red meat, other, pork, deli meat, things like that, and then high sugar foods. So basically what the Mediterranean diet pyramid is saying there, it's saying, listen, I don't want to tell you to be overly restrictive and never have these foods, but how can we, work them out of our diet? How can we have them as little as possible, once a week, or something like that? So here is a more, just a different way to look at the Mediterranean diet. So again, emphasizing unprocessed, plant-rich whole foods. So some carbohydrates that I like to encourage are whole grain pasta, rice, specifically black rice. Here's just a little tip. If it's got more color in it, the more color in any given food, the more polyphenols it has, okay? The more antioxidants it has. So oatmeal, whole grain bread, farro, sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, but I'm really loving purple potatoes, Japanese potatoes, barley, peas. These are all good carb sources of the Mediterranean diet. Fruits, so you really cannot go wrong, but as it relates to gut health, we do want to emphasize berries. So raspberries are some of the best sources. Vegetables, getting in your dark leafy greens. Again, what I love about the Mediterranean diet is all fruits and veggies fit, but I should put a little asterisk there because that's as it relates to people looking to optimize their gut health. If you do have symptoms, you still want to adhere as closely as you can to the Mediterranean diet, but you might need to work with the dietitian to remove some of these foods that could be triggers, okay? That's the difference, all right? Proteins, again, that's gonna be your salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines. Lean meats like your chicken and your turkey. And then healthy fats being the avocado oil, nuts, and nut butters. So here, I've sort of ironed out okay, so many ideas, what does this actually look like? So this is the sort of Parkinson's nutrition prescription that I made. So again, emphasizing the salmon 3 times a week, tuna 2 times a week, beans 4 to 5 times a week, poultry, so that chicken breast 2 to 3 times a week, 8 different fruits and vegetables daily. Again, it doesn't mean that when I'm saying like 8 cups of fruits and veggies, it just means how can you get different fruits and veggies in. Think of it this way, the more diverse your diet is, the more diverse your gut microbiome is gonna be. And we already talked about how important that is for optimizing gut health in general. There was also a research study that showed that folks who ate 30 different fruits or vegetables weekly had significantly more diverse gut microbiome. So again, everything that I'm saying, there's strong evidence to support. And what's also great about this is not only are you getting the fiber, but you're also getting the polyphenols, the antioxidants, right? So these are doing more than one thing for you. We do want to aim, again, speaking of fiber, 35 grams or more from foods daily. Most Americans, by the way, guys, are getting like 15%. I think it's like 5 to 10% that are actually getting 30 to 35 grams. We want to get 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil in per day, 2 to 3 servings of our whole grains, and then regular use of dairy where and when it fits. And these are just some meals that I wanted to show and highlight of what the Mediterranean diet might look like when put into practice. So the next piece is fiber. Again, fiber inherently is sort of built in to the Mediterranean diet because it emphasizes fruits, veggies, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, and legumes, right? So it's already sort of built in, and that's the great thing. When you adhere to the Mediterranean diet, you're already gonna be increasing your fiber intake. Again, we did want to emphasize around 35 grams a day. And as I mentioned, if we go back to this slide where we talk about how the healthy bacteria produce the short chain fatty acids, one of the main things that feeds the healthy bacteria is dietary fiber. So again, we feed our bugs well, they're gonna do good things for us. And the short chain fatty acids, they specifically get to our brain. So specific fiber sources that I just wanted to call out is, again, wheat bran, artichoke, garlic, leeks, and rye. Again, putting an asterisk here, not all of these foods are appropriate if you have gut symptoms, okay? So that's, and that's what you have to work out with the dietitian to really figure out what is triggering you. And believe it or not, guys, foods can also trigger constipation. So don't just think, oh, if I don't tolerate something well, I'm gonna have like loose bowels. No, you can also get constipated as well, okay? So that's just an important piece to understand. Basically, food can be influenced in bloating, burping, constipation, loose bowels, discomfort, and fatigue. So it's, really all of the above. Other sources are resistant starch, which is found in the green banana. Easiest swap to make. Start getting your bananas a little bit more green, and all of a sudden, you are increasing the dietary fibers that your gut bacteria love, and helps increasing that short chain fatty acids. And then, okay, of course, other sources are apples, apricots, carrots, and oranges. Sorry, I spelled that wrong. So those are also great sources as well. So polyphenols, again, everything has sort of a little different mechanism of action, but there is overlap. So polyphenols are those nutrients that are found in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, and seeds that basically help work directly on our gut to primarily improve the immune system. So if you want to think about it this way, right, the fiber really works on the gut microbiome, the polyphenols work on the immune system, right? So kind of going back to the gut functions, okay? You can see how each part of it touches on a different gut function. So polyphenols, again, are those antioxidants that go ahead and scavenge up those free radicals. And free radicals are implicated, they're actually a byproduct of cellular metabolism. So whether you have PD, or you're just aging, or you got heart disease, or whatever, we all have a varying degree of these free radicals kind of floating around in our blood. And the polyphenols grab these up and they make them not dangerous. They can't affect us anymore. So naturally, a diet that's higher in polyphenols is going to help reduce that chronic inflammation that we see, again, just that's associated with aging, but certainly in PD as well. And it also works directly on our gut. So some of the best sources are berries, olives, and leafy greens. So I like to include these every day as a way to get your polyphenols in under the Mediterranean diet. And then weekly or daily is nuts, flax seeds, and soybeans. And I just highlighted some, picture right here so you could really see dark chocolate, cloves, olives, berries, spinach, flax seeds. And again, keep in mind, if you've got no symptoms, carry on, do all of this. If you've got gut symptoms, understand that some of these things may be triggers. But historically, I want to highlight what both folks tolerate well, and that is flax meal. This is actually very helpful for constipation. 1 tablespoon a day of flax meal is very helpful. And then berries as well, okay? So most folks tolerate berries quite well. So then we have fermented foods and probiotics. So these again are where you're getting these foods in your diet. They're kind of increasing and changing the landscape of your gut microbiome. So fermented foods can be found in things like kefir, yogurt, miso paste, as well as kimchi. So again, fermented foods contain live and active microorganisms. So where does this touch? This kind of touches the gut microbiome, okay? And sort of helps produce that more beneficial, helps with the diversity, helps with the evenness, helps reduce the pathogenic bacteria. So that's what these fermented foods are doing. And then I also wanted to highlight this probiotic as well, because unlike the Culturelle or the Floristore or kind of the more popular brands, this has actually been shown, this probiotic, by stimulating stimulating the gut microbiome to actually improve the gut's immune response. Again, nothing happens in isolation. So this is a probiotic I do happen to recommend to a lot of my patients, okay? Then we've got prebiotics, okay? So prebiotics are very similar to dietary fibers in that they sort of stimulate the growth of the production rather of the short chain fatty acids. And prebiotics, again, are found in our food. Now, you'll notice that overlap between fiber and prebiotics, but I just wanted to call out some specific prebiotic sources. So we've got leeks, artichokes, asparagus, onion, and garlic. That green banana is another one. Cooked in cooled rice, believe it or not. And then like beans, soy. So again, these are directly going to the gut, increasing that production of short chain fatty acids. So you can kind of see they feed our microorganisms, and then our microorganisms have a baby, and the baby is short chain fatty acids, and that's what's called postbiotics. And even though studies have been fairly limited in really looking at prebiotics in Parkinson's disease, we do know that they have shown to, again, help with immune function, help with bowel motility, and sort of help relieve constipation. And again, what stays in the gut, what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. So we also find that when we switch to our diet to have more prebiotics, we have improved energy, less fatigue, improved sleep, and less joint pain. So then we have, sort of getting to the end here, but we've got adequate meal spacing. So this is very important because all of us, one of the ways that our gut functions, again, thinking back, we've got the immune, the functional gut digestion, this is kind of where adequate meal spacing touches on. We have something called the migrating motor complex. And the migrating motor complex basically cleans out our gut after we eat. So it helps, in addition to the stomach acid, which helps kill off the bacteria and the pathogens, this migrating motor complex really gets in and kind of cleans things out, right? So we don't have this overgrowth. We don't have bacteria that's in our small intestine or in our stomach where it really shouldn't be. What I want to encourage you all to think about is we've got peristalsis, which is what moves our food when we eat, right? When we eat a meal, we've got our food moving through our stomach, small intestines. What I like to encourage you all to think about is equate that to like cooking the meal in your kitchen. So you're cooking the meal, that's your eating, and then the migrating motor complex is the cleaning of that meal. And you can imagine if when you're cooking a meal in your kitchen and you never clean, that's gonna eventually get kind of gross. You're not gonna really be able to function. Like, how are you gonna, cook in a kitchen after a week of not cleaning it, right? The function shuts down. It's very similar with our migrating motor complex. So we need to optimize that because that's key for getting rid of pathogens, bacteria, stimulating motility, as well as just getting us ready sort of for that next meal, so alleviating constipation. So what happens in the migrating motor complex is there's 4 phases, and it cycles every 1.5 to 2 hours. And so you wanna make sure that you go through these phases completely to get a good full clean. It's the difference between cleaning for 30 minutes versus doing a deep clean of an hour, right? And what happens is, any nutrition, anytime you cook in the kitchen, you're not cleaning. So anytime you eat, that migrating motor complex is shut down. So if you're somebody that eats all day, snacks all day, drinks coffee all day, drinks Diet Pepsi all day, diet soda, whatever, your migrating motor complex, you've got a dirty kitchen. That's the best way to say it. So one way to help optimize our digestion is to do adequate meal spacing your meals. Water is okay, but that's kind of it. Every 3 to 4 hours, okay? Setting a timer can be helpful as well. Then we've got mindfulness. So this sort of touches more on the that gut-brain connection that we talked about. This is our sort of federal government, if you will. So digestion occurs in a parasympathetic state. That is our rest and digest. You guys ever heard rest and digest, fight or flight? Well, it's called that for a reason, because you literally need to be relaxed to have optimal digestion. So in that relaxed state, you can have increased motility, your sphincters sort of relax, which helps pass food through, increased gastric secretions, right? So it helps stimulate the acid, the enzymes. Gallbladder releases bile, which is necessary for the production, the breakdown and digestion of fats, and helps release insulin. So, if we are chronically stressed for whatever reason, it is gonna have impaired motility. So one little tip that I like to recommend is thinking of something that you're grateful for before each meal. A little simple tool like that can help stimulate and activate that parasympathetic nervous system and strengthen that gut-brain connection. Here is a quick little constipation protocol if you wanna, give just some little tips. So first and foremost, you do wanna do that whole lifestyle if we just go back, right? So I would not rush to do a supplement or do this or that if you have not optimized the diet, fiber, everything here from the top, from the bottom up. But say you have done that, other things that can help include water, so increasing your hydration to 9 to 13 cups a day. 2 kiwis a day has been shown to help alleviate constipation. Increasing magnesium citrate and vitamin C can also be helpful. And then having 1 gram of ginger, like having little ginger candies, before each meal can also be helpful to stimulate motility. This is that intestinal permeability protocol, which we sort of discussed at the beginning, where you have that sort of widespread inflammation that has been a result of the gut. So you want to make sure that you're accurately doing the right protocol that's for you. So that's really where a dietitian can come in handy. But it's really focusing on gut healing foods, things like turmeric, dark chocolate, berries, peppermint, clove, bone broth, kefir, chicken, eggs, and then again the fish. So you'll find that there's always overlap, between protocols and between different things that you can do. And then lastly, we've got SIBO. So we didn't touch a whole lot on this today, but SIBO and IBS protocols or reflux protocols, or maybe you don't know what you have. We do want to do that PD, nutrition and lifestyle protocol, but with emphasizing removing the trigger, okay? If we break our ankle running, we need to stop running. We just got to go to PT for a little bit. That's exactly what we do when you have IBS, bloating, SIBO. There could be a few other things I'm missing here. Step 2 is you might need to investigate antimicrobials or antibiotics. Again, this is something that a dietitian will walk you through, as well as your team. And then rebalancing, right? So doing little things like connecting that gut-brain connection, strengthening that, optimizing the functional digestion, maybe looking at oral, like optimizing our oral health, getting an antimicrobial toothpaste, additional digestive support, and then replacement of enzymes. So you can see that we have this foundation that I will actually leave up so we can talk about it as needed. We have this foundation, but then everyone's individual set of circumstances and symptoms can kind of be tailored for their own individual needs. So with that, thank you guys for being such a lovely audience. That is a jam-packed presentation. Take home one or two things. Don't leave feeling like you need to do everything. If you can just switch to your green banana and be on your merry way, that's a success, okay? So thank you guys for listening and happy to take questions. Yes.
For a while, there's a lot of mercury in things like tuna, the bigger fish. How do you catch? Is that still an issue?
Good question. So the question was, what about mercury in things like tuna and other fish? It's a good question. So there definitely is some levels of mercury in tuna. I usually recommend skipjack tuna is a good tuna that's been shown to have lower mercury. As far as salmon, there's not nearly as much mercury in salmon as there is in like canned tuna. And I also find, here's what I do know. We've got concrete research on the benefits of the omega-3s found in salmon and tuna. What we don't have is concrete research about the mercury in something like salmon, right? It's more gray, it's not as clear cut. So I say do what you can, but focus on where there is most evidence, and that is in increasing these foods.
What about laxatives? You didn't mention anything about laxatives or.
Yeah, I love that you
yolk or-
asked. Well, most folks, when we implement all these, they don't need them anymore, right? Kiwis help stimulate motility. Increasing water is a natural laxative, if you will. Magnesium citrate and vitamin C are also natural laxatives. So really when fiber helps have a bowel movement. So, obviously I'm a dietitian, I'm not gonna talk too much about medication. Of course, medication has its place, but what I find is that when we do this, there's very little reliance on medications, and often that's a goal of most patients, is to get off those.
Where is your office?
Southington. Yeah, thank you. But I do virtual, and your insurance might cover virtual. I can answer questions about how insurance works after if you guys have questions. Yes?
If you freeze a green banana, does it keep its integrity to the personality?
Yes it does. That's a good question. The question was, what if you freeze a green banana? Like, will it still be a resistant starch? Yes.
Because usually I wait till they're too brown and then I freeze it, but I think if I freeze it green.
Freeze it green. Just, if you are gonna freeze your bananas, I've done this the hard way, cut them up and then freeze them, because you cannot get that peel off.
Yeah, no. I peel them.
You peel them, perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Any other yes?
Thoughts on intermittent fasting?
No real benefit as it relates to PD or as it relates to optimizing gut health in general. The only thing that I will say is, how we talked about meal spacing and getting the fasting state. So when you're intermittent fasting, right, you're probably, maybe some folks don't eat for 16, like they're not eating for 16, eating for 8, that's how many hours in a day. So, what's happening there is you're getting a lot of those sweeps, like you're really cleaning your kitchen, which is good, but that's really it. There's no cellular benefit or none of that is really supported by the research. Yes?
A lot of us are on medication that we need to take on an empty stomach, and can you help us?
Yeah, you're talking about the carbidopa levodopa, right? Okay. Yeah, so didn't totally touch on that, but I'm glad you brought that up. It's just optimizing that. A lot of thoughts on that. First, it's really 1 hour, okay? It doesn't need to be on an empty stomach unless your doctor tells you otherwise.
What was the question?
Sure. So the question was, what about carbidopa levodopa? What about how does that medication influence, what's that relationship? So the first thing I wanted to say is when you take the medication, it primarily needs to be taken away from protein, but it's really only 1 hour, and you can have non-protein foods. So what affects the absorption is protein, not carbs and fats. So like sometimes I'm like, oh, can we do, especially if you're losing weight, I'm like, oh, can we do like bread with a little bit of peanut butter? Like, that's like a lower, like half a slice of bread with a little bit of peanut butter, right? There's really no protein in that. And then wait an hour and then have your protein. Another important thing as well is how if you have slowed motility and it's slowed by way of like food staying in your gut, that is also where people don't get they're like, wait, my medication has stopped working. And that could be why. So even if you don't have gut symptoms, but you found like you gotta bump up your medication and bump up to like get the effects, I would say what's going on in your stomach, because it's probably not being adequately absorbed because it's staying so long in the stomach. So that's another piece of it as well. Any other questions? Yes.
When you mention a certain amount of water each day, is that includes the water that's in the food you're eating too?
Not really. Yeah, most of us are underhydrated. So even if you don't get 9 to 13 cups, I think is what I said, aim for higher than what you're doing, because most of us are underhydrated in general. Yeah. Any other questions?
And know where the bathrooms are at all times.
Great advice.
Could you put that page up there, that, what to do for constipation?
Mm-hmm. Let me go to that. Right here. Yep, right here. Yes.
2 questions.
Yes.
One, you mentioned dairy was part of the Mediterranean diet. Low fat, full fat, like what's the recommendation?
Usually that's a good question. It is per the individual, but if I were to say to a group of folks like you guys, I usually say 2%. So like, actually, 2% plain Greek yogurt. I like Valle, do whatever brand you like. For milk, usually 1%. Cottage cheese, 2%. And those are usually the dairies that I would recommend as like, get those in your diet. Kefir, 1%. I'm not really recommending like sour cream. You gotta get sour, that's not what is really on my radar. And then cheeses, hard cheeses, use them more as like ancillary, like fun little, put them in a salad, but maybe don't necessarily make mac and cheese, but do the caprese salad with all the veggies and like shredded nuts. Like that's kind of the difference. Yeah.
And then one more question,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. When it comes to your fruits and veggies, I assume you feel the same way about pesticides you do about mercury. Like, should you go for non-organic or should you go for organic? What's your
If you can afford it, by all means. Not gonna hurt you, but don't feel like you need to be perfect to have benefits. So if that feels daunting, because I don't know about you, but my Stop and Shop doesn't even really, there's like 5 things that are organic. Don't let that deter you. Frozen, fresh, canned, there's like very similar nutrient properties. And just to add to that, if you go for organic, know that you're getting, the nutrients are the same, but what you're not getting is the glyphosate. And glyphosate has those that's where that like, don't, go organic. So just also understand why you're doing what you're doing, but don't, if that's not accessible to you, it's okay, it's more than okay. Any other questions? The only quick thing I just want to say, guys, if you are interested, I'm happy to work with me one-on-one. I'll be in the back. I'm happy. Really quick, so I do take Aetna, Anthem, United, Cigna, and then I can talk to you about how that may work. Medicare I do take, but just as a caveat, Medicare is a tough insurance because to take only because they only allow visits if you have diabetes or chronic kidney disease, but if you have secondary, you can always bill secondary. So I just wanna, I feel like maybe a lot of people would have that question. So it's not a me thing. It's if you don't have that diagnosis, Medicare's like, sorry, we're working on fixing that, by the way. So if you see a post to support that federally, support that, because it's not cool that that's all that they cover. But thank you, thanks guys.
Thank you.
Megan, do you wanna get up?
Do I wanna get up?
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know what I said. Sure. Anybody have any questions for the nurse? Yeah, does anyone have any questions that are nursing related or neurology related?
Tell us about yourself.
Sure. Oh, okay. So I'm Megan. I'm a nurse navigator with the Parkinson's program at Yale. I've been a neurology nurse for about 3 years now, and a nurse in general for about 13 years. I work with all of our Yale-based clinicians, and you may have spoken with me after a new patient visit. I make calls to new patients is to go over recommendations and sort of connect the dots with what was, what the doctor recommended and how you can actually enact that in your lives. Because oftentimes there's a lot of those recommendations. A lot of times things fall through the cracks, so I'm sort of like that safety net. I also organize the wellness programming for the Parkinson Center, and I'm very happy to say we have some new programs coming down the pike this fall. We'll be offering free health coaching for people with Parkinson's. We'll be offering something called the Alexander Technique, and what is the other one? Oh, meditation for people with Parkinson's disease. These will be offered a couple times throughout the next year, and all will start this fall. Health coaching will start in September. Meditation and the Alexander Technique will start in October.
You say what is something briefly about the Alexander Technique?
Yeah, so the Alexander Technique, if you haven't heard of it, it is a mindful-based movement and postural program. That the goal of Alexander Technique is to give you more control over your body. And the techniques that are taught there are meant to, take with you. You're given homework. It's kind of like an intense program. But yes, it's all mindful-based movements, so that when you are outside of the class, you're sort of remembering, how to position your body, and sort of what your body is doing in space in that moment, just kind of making you more aware. It's very interesting. It is useful for people with Parkinson's disease, for both motor and non-motor symptoms. And it's also used for stage acting. In fact, our instructor works at the Yale School of Drama, and he's also worked with people with Parkinson's for the past 15 years.
Where will that take place?
It's gonna be all virtual, actually. Yeah, so we wanted to make it as accessible to everyone as possible, so we figured virtually was the best way to go for that.
How will we find out?
I can, let's see. We have what's called a Yale Parkinson's event calendar, where I comprise basically all the stuff that's happening in and around Connecticut, as well as nationally, each month. And I'm happy, if it's okay with Terry, and if you're interested, I can send out that calendar to the email list each month as well. And if you are a patient at Yale, you will get that via my chart as well. That's how it's done typically. So, thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to be joining the group.
Well, I figured out how to work the knob. There's a knob back there. I didn't know, they didn't tell me. Anyway, do you have any questions for me? I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, so I can't answer anything medically, but if you have something like fitness related, I can certainly answer yours. Are you good? All right. Grab a card in the back that has all our support group dates.